Go ahead.
So, obviously I have a perspective of 50 plus years as a former athlete to a coach and now administrator. And I've seen the culture change. I've seen the culture change at the school quite a bit from a fraternity-oriented group of athletes to a group of athletes who mainly view their team as a social unit. And I think that has a lot to do with with the closeness that the players have. Back in the day, a lot of our athletes only really were engaged in the season and a little bit out of season. Now it's year round, and a lot of athletes live off campus with their teammates. So all these things contribute to the sort of the blending of the athletic and the social at a school like William & Mary.
Right. Do you feel like, how did you kind of create that culture? Was it a mindful thing, or was it just something that you innately did as you were figuring things out as a young coach? You weren't the first soccer coach, but were you the second soccer coach at William & Mary?
I was actually the fourth soccer coach.
Fourth, okay.
First coach is a little history of William & Mary soccer. The first coach was a grad student who was a baseball guy, and they asked him to do soccer, and I guess he liked the $1,000 stipend, so he did it. Paul McLaughlin. Then we had Joe Agee, who was my coach, who coached a number of different sports here. The last one he coached was golf for a number of years, but he was football, basketball. He played baseball. He did soccer to keep it alive, basically, because the athletic director, Les Hooker, was going to drop the sport. It was a little bit of an annoyance. And then the guy I was assistant to, Jim Carpenter, did it for 1 or 2 years, and he left. I was his assistant in soccer and lacrosse, and they just came to me and said, "Do you want to be the coach for both programs and teach phys ed full time?" And I went, "Sure." $7,000 a year, deal.
So you kind of took it from the lack of a better term, kind of the dustbin, so to speak, and grew it into, an historic program and a national power, through the 80s and 90s.
We didn't have a very good team consistently from the beginning in 1965 until about the mid-70s. We had one good team, and that was the team that I was the assistant for, that was undefeated regular season, 9-2-2, lost in both the Southern Conference and the state championship. And the reason we were so good, we had 9 seniors, and we had a transfer named Phil Espin, who played one season, scored maybe 10 goals in 13 games, and was Virginia State Player of the Year. He's a great athlete. And so then I took it over, and, we had basically walk-ons. We had no scholarships until the mid-70s, when some people from Northern Virginia, led by Everett Germain, who had founded the Annandale Boys Club. Annandale was the first really big club in Northern Virginia, won a national championship under 19 boys in the mid-70s. They started sending players to us, started helping us with some contributions and scholarships. And basically, in the mid-70s, that's when we took off. And from the mid-70s, basically until I retired, we had winning seasons. We had, I think, 29 straight winning seasons.
Right.
And a lot of that was due to that insurgence of really good players from Northern Virginia, and then subsequently other parts of Virginia, such as Virginia Beach, the whole Kempsville High School, Billy O and Steve Jolly, Wade Barrett connection, which continues today.
Right. And so those guys, how many of those guys went on to play, professionally?
Well, we've had a lot of players go on to play professionally. The 3 that pretty much made a living, some decent money would have been Steve Jolly, Wade Barrett and Aiden Brown, all who had, pretty long careers in Major League Soccer. Aiden went overseas and made some money in Norway. One year was the goalkeeper of the year. Still the goalkeeper coach for San Jose Earthquake right now. And so, but we've had other guys that have had, a cup of coffee here and there in Major League Soccer, or even a season or two. And then certainly a lot of players who played at the USL level.
Right. So I guess we should tell people who you are for those who don't know.
Yeah.
This is we're talking to Al Albert this morning. He's how do you describe you? You've been around soccer for,
Been around
all your life, and since the late '60s, you were with William and Mary, and you, like you were just saying, you became the head coach in what year was it that you became head coach?
Became head coach in 1971 through
71.
2003.
Okay.
So my background was not in soccer, was really not in athletics. My parents had no interest in it. Back in the day, there was no youth soccer juggernauts, youth sports juggernauts. We had basically Little League Baseball and Pop Warner football, and that was it. I was kind of rushed through school, got to play some sports at William and Mary, and then got an opportunity to coach. And I always really loved athletics. So I had, I was not the person that had the great athletic career and then just normally moved into coaching. I got involved in coaching and physical education. And at that point, it just happened. It was a good time for me. I had no competition for that first job. Now, of course, if the Division I job comes open, there are hundreds of applications.
So, soccer's changed, right? Over since you first got involved with it. What has been the growth, and what do you attribute it to? And obviously you played a role in that. You're modest, and I don't know how much you want to.
Well, I attribute the growth of soccer to the need for people to have an alternative to the so-called 3 or 4 major sports: football, basketball, baseball, and track.
Mm-hmm.
In the 60s, we saw a lot of sports become prevalent at college and high school. Wrestling, lacrosse, soccer, gymnastics, a whole bunch of different sports came into the forefront. And soccer, I think, very much fit the sort of suburban middle class family model. We actually, at one of our tournaments, had one come up and said, "Is it okay if I sell these sweatshirts here?" And they were soccer mom sweatshirts. She basically coined the term soccer mom, which is now generic, I guess.
Yeah.
And the minivan, mom taking kids to practice, that was soccer. All the other sports, the athletes played in high school and played pickup, and didn't cost a lot of money. And unfortunately, the way the game evolved here has been a problem ultimately for to reach the highest level, because we're still trying to get away from pay for play and get the toughest best athletes involved, many of whom their family doesn't have the kind of money to be involved, and also it's not part of their culture. So
right.
Rather than being the sport of the poorest people, it's the sport of the middle class in this country, and kind of work upside down. But I attribute it. It's a big country, a lot of people looking for opportunities. Football in particular has had its issues with head injuries, and soccer to some extent, but not as much as football. And I think the danger of football is making a lot of people think about whether they want their kid to play football, and so soccer is a reasonable alternative.
Right. So in the mid '70s, you started a soccer club in town in Williamsburg.
Started soccer, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you and Stu Spurn. I imagine there were others involved as well. Or was it just
Number of faculty people. It really
uh
started out of William and Mary, on William and Mary property,
hmm
as an opportunity for faculty people's kids to play. We probably had 100 kids in the first year program back in the mid 70s, and I
hmm
bet a third of them were probably children, faculty, and
Right.
neighbors. Um, and that developed obviously quite nicely. When I retired, one of my goals was to increase the diversity of the kids in our program. And so, actually, along with Johnny Kamara,
hmm
who played at William Mary, coached at William Mary, now is full time for the Legacy, we decided to start a grassroots program in some of the poor neighborhoods. And we went to an area called Grove on the outskirts of town, almost 100% African American. Went to a playground, tried to get some kids starting to play. And, we had kids showing up late on bikes. We had maybe a dozen kids. And we were figuring this is really, it's a lot of work and not getting a lot out of it. Well, we engaged a woman who was a school administrator for James River Elementary School that served Grove. And she said, well, why don't we bring it to the school? But that's a good idea. Long story short, we took it to the school the next year. We were working with one of the custodians there, who I saw the other day, working with Mary now, Howard Wallace. We had a call for kids, and literally we had 100 kids show up in the gym. That
Wow.
was the first day of the community partnership at James River, and it was chaos, but it was good chaos. We cut it down a little bit, and we had about 40 kids from James River that second year, and then the program took off. And the idea was it was free, but more so we provided after school practice and free transportation home so that the parents only had to bring the kids to the field on Saturday. And we even ran a bus from James River, one school, on Saturday to
Mhm.
bring them over. So that really helped quite a bit. We grew the program, and then in COVID, we weren't able to do the program at school, and we were getting originally we raised a little bit of money. Then we got a pretty good grant from the Williamsburg Health Foundation to fund this program, based on increasing activity for at-risk kids from families that were below a certain income level. We did some metrics, and we were reaching the right kids. And when the program shut down, the health department still wanted to serve that purpose. Long story short, now the health department gives the Legacy a very large grant, and we have free rec soccer for everybody. So we've gone from 10 kids at a playground in Grove, and about 15 years later, now we have literally 1,000 kids playing free rec soccer, and a lot of them are from portions of the community that we were hoping to serve. The African American community, also the Hispanic community, a lot of people who are living in the fringes, working in restaurants and doing other work, and we're not connected at all to the soccer community.
Right. So what were some of the challenges and hurdles that you had to get over and through to make that into what it is today?
Well, it was a lot of work
Yeah.
to organize,
Yeah.
working with the schools, and trying to do it so that they would you know, provide we were paying teachers to do this on extra, trying to get kids signed up, parents' permission, trying to integrate it with our normal rec program. At first, we put them in the rec league, but then we found that wasn't working. So we eventually started our own division, community partnership, like teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one elementary school against another third
Right.
grade team, that type of thing. So we went through, but mainly it was just a lot of work. We had to recruit coaches, we had to recruit school teachers, um, we had to make sure that people showed up. Sometimes we'd have to have a pickup game because not enough people would show up from one team,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a difference between the quality of teams. Some schools were really into it. We had some of the best athletes in the school. other schools, it was the Bad News Bears, and they were getting killed. So,
Right.
you still run into that. We actually had a couple of kids come directly out of that program at James River. Shalandra Buskey and Aaliyah Little both went and played in college, and both never played any kind of soccer other than the community partnership program. And so that was pretty cool.
Yep.
And I guess we could also say that Kendall Pressey, who's one of the staff members of the Legacy, we discovered him at a recruiting event for the community partnership. I'm not sure he ever played in the community partnership, but as part of our outreach to the elementary schools, we did field days to try to, interest kids, and he showed up at one of those and became infatuated with soccer, and
Yeah.
now he's a staff member of the
Yeah, and
Legacy.
he went on to play in college as well. I mean, how? So I like to call Johnny Kamara the kind of the Pied Piper of soccer. Like if he's on the field, kids are listening. How important was he to getting the program kicked off and getting kids to buy in?
Johnny was very important. If I show up at the school, they would just look at me like, I'm another teacher, principal, or something. Johnny shows up. He's one of them, and
Right.
he's very good with groups of kids, getting them excited, motivated, and so I knew that it would be important for me to have somebody like Johnny to get this going, and he was definitely an integral part. Now, I've basically been able to get out of it and turn everything over to the club, and Johnny and Alex Byrne, who's another staff member, they've really taken, and Kendall Pressey have taken ownership of that whole concept. And even though it's not the same community partnership program, they still, through the free rec soccer, are reaching, I think, the same kind of kids.
Right. So when you think about the success of this program, and have you looked to encourage other communities and people that throughout the country to kind of scale this in other places, or have you seen it
Well,
kind of repeated anywhere?
the problem, we sold the idea to a lot of people, but it's a lot of work and there's some expense. So you have to fundraise or get somebody like the Williamsburg Health Foundation to sponsor it. So, like a lot of good ideas, it didn't really work because of those two reasons, the
Mm-hmm.
expense and the effort.
Yeah.
I think it was a very altruistic idea. Let's get these kids that aren't engaged playing, and it won't cost them anything, and it'll be a lot of work. And we were lucky that I think we channeled it right. And then the Williamsburg Health Foundation was huge because instead of trying to fundraise to have this program go or have the club just suck up the cost, we are able to get that grant annually. And so I think, I talked to a lot of people about it, and a lot of people thought it was a really cool idea, but I'm not aware of anyone directly replicating our program.
Right. Did you have a lot of youth players act as volunteers, like players from the club,
We
help
had
out?
some.
Mm-hmm.
We had some of that. Our main source of coaches were college kids from William and Mary who have the highest degree of community engagement, I think, of any school in the country. And we would go to the office that handled student engagement, and they would help us recruit coaches. The men and women's soccer clubs at William and Mary, the group of kids who are pretty good players, but not quite at the varsity level or didn't want that level of commitment. Some kids who had dropped off of the varsity. Those were a number of the kids, and we paid them. We paid stipends. And it was a few $100s, but it was enough to make them feel like, okay, I'm committed. And then we also had a few people at the school who not only ran the program as an administrator, but actually coached the teams. And that was pretty cool because then they would year after year be cultivating players. Those were the teams like James River and Norge Elementary that actually had the strongest team. And of course, Andy Jacobs, who was administrator, principal in Matoka, and was also running the team.
Right.
So yeah, so it was very interesting, and it was a lot of work, but very worthwhile. And now it has evolved into something that is a little different, but
Yeah.
very good.
And so talk about the two that ended up playing in college. I mean, what a remarkable,
Yeah.
story for those two.
Shalandra Buskey she was a very good basketball and soccer player at Jamestown. Went originally to Goucher in Baltimore, Division III, played there, and then I think finished up at Virginia Wesleyan. Peanut,
Peanut. Yeah.
she actually got a scholarship and played at BMI
Mm-hmm.
in Division I, and so that was pretty cool, really, to
Yeah.
see that. We had some other really good athletes, and I think a couple of them drifted away in football.
Right.
So I remember Daryl Jones, I think it was his name, used to pick him up and bring him to practice, but then kind of fell by the wayside. And then I saw he was returning kickoffs for Jamestown High School football. So
Yeah.
we've had some great athletes come out of Williamsburg, and some of them are the kind of kids. Devontae Dedman playing in the Canadian Football League now as a kickoff return specialist and played at William Mary. I mean, he's 5'8", 185 pounds. Probably would have been amazing soccer player.
Yeah.
But never tried to kick the ball, to my
Yeah.
knowledge.
Talk about that. The kind of the conversation of if the U.S.'s best athletes, played like they do in Europe or South America or whatever. I mean,
yeah, I'm always talking about that. Some of my colleagues diminish that fact, think we're getting a lot of the great athletes, and that's not the biggest problem. I don't think that's the only answer, but I do think if you have the culture, and people wonder why countries like Holland and Belgium can beat us with only 5 or 10 million people, whatever they have, but that's 5 or 10 million. Every person in that country
right.
would be a soccer player if they could.
Mm-hmm.
Here, maybe 30% of the country would pick soccer, if that.
Right.
If you said what sport could you be great at, basketball, football, or soccer, I think 70% of the country would pick football or basketball.
Right.
And it's just
Yeah.
the culture, and so we're not really firing all cylinders at hundreds of millions of people. And then again, a lot of the poorest, toughest people aren't even ever trying to play. So, but we still have a lot of people playing, and we have a lot of opportunities, and I think it's continues to get better. But still waiting for we've had some players play in the top leagues, obviously, and be really good players. But I don't think anybody would say that we have one of the top 20 players in the world, like we do in basketball. We probably have, 5 or 10 of the top players out of the top 20.
Right, right. Yeah, it's an interesting debate, isn't it, or discussion to theorize about that. Yeah, so I wish that your community partnership idea would expand across the country. It's I've seen it, and I wish it would find its way to other places.
So the interesting thing is, I think there's a debate within the United Soccer Foundation, U.S. Soccer Foundation. It was started by U.S. Soccer with the profits of the 1994 World Cup, and I think within the U.S. Soccer Foundation, they very much want to impact grassroots soccer, and they've chosen to put mini pitches in. Hoping kids will pick up. I don't know if that works or not. It's nice to have them.
Right.
I think the people from U.S. Soccer wish they had the money back because they would rather use that money for the top players to develop them when they're young.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all depends on whether you're looking for the 5 or 10 year solution or the 50 to 100 year solution. I
Right.
think the 50 to 100-year solution is we got to get all these kids playing, from different communities to where, a kid thinks soccer, basketball, it's six of one, half dozen another instead of, oh, yeah, no, if I can play basketball, I'm going to play basketball.
Right. Yeah, we just had Jay Demerit on, and he was talking about kind of developing the whole athlete and you know just steering kids towards their let them make their own decisions and that sort of things. And I think that maybe in those communities that's the only focus is they have to play certain sports to be successful. If
Mm-hmm.
there were more programs like what you've developed, I think that soccer could be part of the equation.
Yeah, I think, there'll always be forces in those places that would not want soccer stealing the best athletes. It's
Right.
human nature. If you went into, the toughest area of Miami and tried to take kids away from the youth football programs,
Mm-hmm.
those people would not be happy.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not going to happen overnight or on a large scale, but I do think what we did could be replicated if people,
Right.
wanted to spend the time and had the money
Yeah.
to get those kind of kids playing.
Yeah, it seems that I mean, even in the last 10 years or so, that soccer is it's definitely climbing in its popularity in this country. And I mean, that has to be kind of rewarding to you in a way that who's been involved with it for so long, that you have Messi here, and it's
Well, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Pele phenomenon and going to see Pele at RFK, and the impact that he had, but then the infrastructure wasn't there to, capitalize, and then everything kind of went away, and North American Soccer League folded.
Mhm.
Now, I don't think Major League Soccer is going to fold, but I think we still, need. This is a huge country. I think the biggest area of growth. There'll be more Major League Soccer League teams, and probably there'll be geographical divisions that will make that more, profitable, and, less expensive. But I think the biggest thing is for every community, as you would have in other countries, to have a team. The growth of college soccer in some ways has inhibited that because, for instance, in Williamsburg, William and Mary is the local team, but it's the college
Right.
rather than the Williamsburg Soccer Club,
Right.
or the Williamsburg United being a team.
Mhm.
And I think we've seen, like the example nearby with Lions Bridge,
Mhm.
that can be done, and I think, and I see teams being added, but it's a huge country. I mean, we used to have, total maybe 50 to 100 pro teams for a country of 300 million people. Now we probably have, hundreds, but we should have thousands, if not tens of thousands, just like we have that many college teams all over the place. So
Right.
that basically anybody who wants to play in college can probably find a junior college or a small school somewhere where they could go and play. They really have the passion to do that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the impact of the upcoming World Cup brings to the country. And um, so yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, even in my time, just the growth of the game, and it's really encouraging
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
So
No, it is. And, yeah.
yep. So yeah, I mean, what else you got, Al? What other wisdom can you drop on us? Good player stories or things like that. That I don't know, especially from like kind of going off the cuff here, but just some kids that maybe you brought in that you know maybe weren't going to be your best player, that worked their tails off and then became really important, crucial players for you.
Well, I mean, if we want to be self-serving, we could talk about our own kids. My son Graham and your son Augie, who came from Williamsburg youth and high school and walked on without scholarship money, and
Mhm.
ultimately became key players. I
Mhm.
think that is the role of college soccer. College soccer gets kind of a bad rap because of the shortness of the season and, the NCAA regulations and all kinds of things. But it is one way that players can progress. So I guess the best example of that would be Aiden Brown, who is arguably the best athlete I've ever coached. A little bit of a freak of nature, a guy that's 6'5". He was 6'5", probably 180 pounds. Now he's 6'5", probably 240. But he's a mountain of a man, and yet when he was in the Olympic team and they would do like warm up things where players are jogging, have to hit the ground and get up, he would be the first one up. Whereas usually it would be a little guy,
Mm-hmm.
Usually the big goalkeepers are the ones that have a hard time with the low balls.
Right.
And Aiden he's just a phenomenal athlete. I think when he was playing for the Rapids, one guy said he's probably the best athlete in town, other than on the Nuggets or on the football team.
Right.
I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete, and he played 3 sports in high school. Did not play in the usual most competitive club in the San Francisco Bay Area where he's from, and was going to go to Division III and play all 3 sports: volleyball, water polo, and soccer. And his father had been a great athlete. When Mary came to us, he was actually our 3rd choice in recruiting that year. Our first choice went to Cal. Our second choice went to Georgetown, and we got Aiden. And Aiden turned out to be the best of the 3 by far. And he never probably would have played soccer if he hadn't come to William Mary and developed. Played in our great 96 team as a freshman, got that opportunity, and then went on to basically carry us to 3 more NCAA bids, then went and had a pro career, and now is a pro coach. So I think the thousands of college teams, I mean, we see players coming into the pros from Division III schools. I think anytime you can get into a good program and you're playing regularly, professionally in college, I think there's an opportunity there to develop certainly into a professional player at some level.
Right.
So,
how did you, when you were out recruiting, if you can remember, what did you look for, like off the field type stuff? What were the characteristics that you were trying to identify that would fit for you?
I think that, excuse me 1 second, I'm going to close the door.
Okay.
I think the biggest characteristic, obviously, you're looking for amazing soccer talent or athletic talent. When we would take walk-ons, true walk-ons, it would always be for that reason. Somebody that had upside, and for some reason, so a school like William Mary, for instance, we're not going to get the most technical player, the most advanced player, and also the greatest athlete. And we're also, by the way, trying to find a great student. We would get one or the other. And if we had a walk-on like it, and Aiden didn't have a scholarship in it. If we had somebody with that kind of ability, we would hope they would develop goalkeeper easier. But even, we have players in the past like Chris Feldman, Nathan Belcher, who were great athletes, and that they would become a great 12th man, or maybe even a defender, who could just run with anybody. And we still see players like that, not true, just true walk-ons, but recruited walk-ons. We have some on the team right now who I think have developed because of their athletic ability and have become our top players. And you're looking for a player that's committed. I mean, it's a lot of work, even soccer in the weight room, practicing on your own, pickup games, watching games, playing in the summer. All these things contribute to the development of the player. So you want somebody who is truly committed. I think you also want somebody who, if they're not going to play right away, are going to be a great team member and are going to make the team better, develop themselves, but at the same time, do whatever it is to make the team better, wait for their chance. Had a number of, examples of kids who when they got their opportunity, they took advantage of it and never came off the field. And then other people, constantly will feel maybe like they should be on the field, but then when they get the opportunity, where they don't show it every day in practice.
Right.
So, you're looking for a lot of things. Not always the best athlete or the best player, but they have to have the other things too. And, one distraction can really bring the team down. If a player, is body language or moping, saying things in the locker room. These are all things that can make a difference between the team, doing as well as they can and falling short.
Right. Yeah, it's important to be a good teammate no matter what your role. So, yeah, I mean, I really wanted to get you talking about the community partnership, and it's been a bonus to get all the other conversations. So, I really appreciate it, Al.
Yeah,
And,
anytime.
it's not every day we get a true soccer legend on the podcast. So I really appreciate it.
That just means I'm old. Legend means old,
Yeah.
other than messy.
All right.
Anytime. Thanks.